My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Those of us of a certain age have fond memories of the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical The King and I, and especially the song Getting to Know You. What about getting to know yourself? Are there practical ways of understanding who you are, why you are, and how you may embrace your best life? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Georgina Cannon, has collaborated with several experts to share 20 ways to find the true you. Georgina Cannon teaches hypnosis at the University of Toronto and privately teaches past life regression and life between lives facilitation. She has spent more than 24 years working as a counselor and coach and currently specializes in major life changes, relationship challenges, and emotional issues. Her website is georginacannon.com, and she joins me this week to share her wisdom, experience, and latest collaboration with luminaries of multiple modalities, your guide to self-discovery. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Georgina Cannon. Welcome, Georgina.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here. It's a delight.
Georgina, please share with our listeners your early path and how it shaped your understanding of both consciousness and unconsciousness.
I think I came into that naturally. I mean, I was born in England, and we are very aware of the unconscious, superconscious in the way of spirits and ghosts and fairies, and we believe in fairies at the bottom of the garden. And we know there's more than just us. We don't talk about it every day, but it's just part of our history. It's just part of who we are. So when I came, and by the way, in England, I was I started off as a secretary and then became a journalist. And when I came to Canada, I came as a journalist. And from there, was very surprised that North Americans didn't get it, didn't understand that there are such things as ghosts and spirits and fairies and goblins and all things supernatural. And I came to Canada, loved the country because it's a beautiful country, and was a journalist here for a while, and then opened my own public relations company. And that grew with some fascinating clients, and we did some wonderful special events. And until a very large international public relations company came into Canada and wanted to open up in Canada and asked if I would be willing to join them, they would buy my company, which at that time, I wasn't sure, but my then husband said, oh, come on, go talk to them, see what they say. And I went to New York and met the founder. And he showed me why he wanted me. He wanted me to join his team that would be flown around the world to work with other clients in specialty. And he said my specialty was innovation and creativity, new ways of looking at old problems, situations. So how could I turn that down? So I joined them and as creative director for Canada. And after a few years, they promoted me to managing director Canada with 4 offices across the country. And it was very seductive. It was extraordinary. And my daughter, of course, loved it. She loved her mother being a mogul. But I don't know, I was one of 3 senior women worldwide. And at that time, it wasn't a comfortable place to be a senior woman in industry, any industry. And I just couldn't take it anymore. And eventually I left and looked for something else to do. So I looked around and studied Reiki, got my Reiki master, studied Gestalt therapy, psychodrama. I looked at color therapy. I even looked at massage therapy, realized it wasn't for me, then happened upon hypnosis and realized that was it, because I understood that the subconscious drives us, it drives humanity. And I also knew that was the way through to spirituality. So in 1997, I took my certification at the National Guild of Hypnotists. And in 1998, I opened up the Ontario Hypnosis Centre clinic and school. And it grew to be Canada's largest school, where I taught past life regression facilitation, which I'd studied under the wonderful Henry Bowduk, and Life Between Lives under Michael Newton. And then I sold it 10, 11 years ago because I got sick. And unfortunately, it's just gone downhill since then. And the person who bought it has disappeared. So it no longer exists. But I still see clients a couple of days a week. And I teach, I was invited to teach at the University of Toronto, continuing education. And I teach hypnosis there in 3 semesters, 3 different types of semesters, including spiritual hypnosis. And I write books and articles, and I have a newsletter. And up until last week, I was doing, and I will do it again, a weekly free meditation every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. But I've stopped that for a while. I just need a bit of a rest.
Tell us about your first experience with hypnosis and what it meant to you.
My first experience with hypnosis. First of all, I realized that I'm living in trance a lot of the time. A lot of what I do is automatic. And therefore, if it's automatic, it comes from the subconscious mind. If it comes from the subconscious mind, it's automatic. Now, that's just hypnosis. But my first experience with past life regression, that was a whole other thing. Is that what you're interested in?
Actually, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
But I'm just curious as to that first session that you had.
Okay. The first session I had with a client, they came in for, I know, it was fear of flying. They came in for fear of flying, and I used the protocol we called systemic desensitization. And they couldn't believe how well it worked and how easily it worked. Because in normal psychotherapy, the psychotherapist desensitizes you bit by bit over weeks. In hypnosis, because the subconscious mind doesn't understand between real or imagined, it can happen in half an hour or 45 minutes. So you take the client through their fear in 10 different steps, and they experience it subconsciously and they can let it go. And it's total magic. In fact, it's so magical that when I was teaching that particular protocol one year, I had a class of about 34, 35 people. The dean of the School of Social Work at the University of Toronto was in my class. And I said, now you're going to learn today how to release fears and phobias in 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or at most 60 minutes, or even very occasionally 2 sessions. And he put his hand up and he said, Georgina, that's impossible. It just doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. I've been a therapist for many years. So I said, okay, let's have a bet. So we had a $10 bet. Long story short, he paid me the $10, and he's the one that got me into the School of Social Work, which eventually got me into the main school at University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. So it's powerful. Our subconscious mind manages who we are and how we are at every stage of our being. Our body, our mind, our thoughts, our patterns, good and bad, are all come from the subconscious mind. Our long-term memory comes from our subconscious mind. Our short-term memory is our conscious mind. Our willpower is our conscious mind. But 80% of what we do every day is what we did yesterday. 80%, if not more. And that all comes from subconscious mind. So that's why hypnosis is so powerful. And I teach all my clients self-hypnosis so they can do it themselves.
For those who have never experienced hypnosis or may have misconceptions about it based upon fictional offerings, what is hypnosis like?
Oh, it feels like a relaxation. And many people for the first time say, I don't think I was in hypnosis because I didn't feel different. I think people expect to either bark like a dog or levitate or something. And what happens is it's you know what? It's the same brain waves as meditation. Exactly the same brain waves. The only difference is the goal is different. So with meditation, you're going in for peace, and for hypnosis, you're going into the same brain waves to make change. So how you feel in meditation, the same level of brain waves, the same level of settling down and relaxation or focus. You don't have to relax, you can focus. Same level of focus is hypnosis. And by the way, you can hypnotize people, and I have done so on a highway when there was a crash. You can hypnotize people at Grand Central Station. You don't need to be quiet and you don't need to be relaxed. It's just focus.
I think a lot of people in Grand Central Station would benefit from that.
a lot of people, Grand Central Station, are in hypnosis. They automatically go to the track that they go to every day without thinking about it.
This is true, that programming. Your new book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery, in that book, you share a fascinating story about your first past life regression and the healing that it produced. Please tell us about that.
Oh, yes. I was at Henry Bolduc's teaching in the Blue Hills of Virginia. And for the first time, we had partnered up and we're being facilitated by a partner in the class. And this was the experience. And the gentleman I was working with said to me, do you have a goal? Because we can always ask for a goal, although we won't necessarily get there because the soul takes us where it thinks we need to go. So I said, sure, why not? I've had migraines at least once a month ever since I can remember. Let's see if I can get rid of my migraines. And he said, okay, we can ask. So he facilitated me into hypnosis. And suddenly I had this stench. It was a smell like rotting garbage. And it took me a while to realize what it was. I thought I was in a garbage dump or something, and I realized it was me. I was stinking. I was smelling of garbage. And then I saw myself, an old, haggard woman. I don't know how old I was. I could have been quite young, but I was obviously bereft in many levels, with very few teeth, stringy hair, filthy, barefoot, living in a cave, and very, very, very thin. I was, close to death from starving. I lived outside of a village, and my role and my interaction with that village was to provide herbs for the women who were going through pregnancy or abortion, or if they were having a troubled pregnancy, they'd call me down. So I acted as a sort of midwife. And if they remembered, they paid me in food. They rarely remembered. They dismissed me once the job was done. One day I get called down to the village into a field that they used to call it the birthing field, where the women would go to give birth, and they would always have a group of 5 or 6 women around them helping and singing and chanting. And this woman was lying there screaming, and there was blood everywhere. She had half given birth to a huge baby that had died on the way out. So I pulled it from her, and it was dead. And then she just screamed once more and died. She had bled out. The women scattered and left me with these 2 corpses. There was nothing I could do except with my bare hands scrabble in the earth and bury them. I did the best I could. I dragged my weary self back up to my cave. I was exhausted and fell fast asleep. The next thing I knew, I was brutally awaked. I felt this violent pain in the side of my body. And I looked up and there was this man standing over me, smelling as if he was drunk. He obviously had something to drink, and he was yelling, "You killed my son! You killed my son!" And I tried to scamper away, but he knocked me down. And he picked up this huge rock and smashed it over my head, on the left side of my head, by my temple, over my eye. And I instantly died. The facilitator, remembering the lessons we'd learned, helped me heal and forgive and let it go and bring the wisdom back from that lifetime. When I came back from that life, we were both deeply shaken. After all, this was a practice session. Who knew? And I waited for another migraine and never got another migraine. That healing from that journey that he did so eloquently and so expertly, let me leave it behind. And I'm still waiting for a migraine. Don't have any more.
That is such a wonderful sharing of both the experience, the understanding, and the healing. Are all past life regression sessions as dramatic as that?
Oh, no. Many of them are very ordinary. Many of them are people who may be farmers with big families, sometimes happy, sometimes rancorous, sometimes going through hardship. But the big event of each year is bringing in the harvest. So most lives are very ordinary. So when people say to me, how do I know I didn't make that up? My stock answer is to say, well, if you're going to make it up, you'd have become royalty or something rather grand and wonderful, like Merlin.
Mm. And of those sessions that you've offered, the myriad of sessions that you've offered, is there one or two that stand out for you?
Oh, I have so many. There's one that literally changed her life. This woman came to see me with her husband, and she said she was going in for surgery for a pacemaker, and she wanted to regress to find out who she was. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, we don't know, but when I was about 17 or 18, I was found on a bench in Toronto. I found myself there with no identification. I was crying. I just didn't know where I was. And I just was alone. I had some scrapes and scratches on me, but I didn't know how I got there. And this woman came up to me and said, can I help you? And she took me home and gave me some tea and something to eat. And we phoned the police, but there was no record of any accidents. And I stayed with her for quite a while. And she gave me the name, and she told me what her name was, what she's using. And she found out she loved to dance. So she joined the Arthur Murray Dance School as a teacher. And there she met her husband. And her husband and her medical doctor are the only people that know her story. She lives a very nice life in Canada. She teaches line dancing to seniors. She just lives a good life. She can't travel very far, or she couldn't travel very far because she didn't have any papers. She didn't know where she came from or didn't have any papers at all. So she said to me, I'm going in for surgery and I want to know who I am, just in case something happens in surgery. I'm frightened. I'm frightened that I won't come out of it. And I want to know, and my husband wants to know who I really am. So I regressed her back, and we got to about age of 12, and she brought herself out and she said, no, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do this. I just can't. I'm so frightened. And she was absolutely terrified. So something was going on deep in her subconscious that hadn't come up before. So I put her back into hypnosis, and we left it where it was, and we worked on making her part of the team for the surgery so that she would be part of the healing and not feel it was being done to her, which a lot of people do when they go in for surgery. She was part of the surgery team at a deep subconscious level. A few weeks later, she came back and she said, the doctors are surprised how quickly I healed. But most of all, Georgina, I want to complete that journey. And this time I'll stick with it. So we took her all the way back. And I said to her, well, she said, I really want to know who I am. So I said, well, let's try something slightly different. Are you okay with that? So she said, yes. So I regressed her back into the womb. And I asked her if she could hear her mother's voice before we went further back into past life. And she brought us, and she was there for a moment, and she brought herself out and she said, oh my gosh, I know who I am. And she ran out of the hypnosis room into the waiting room and called her husband and said, I've got names. And they ran out. And now remember, this was before the internet when this first happened to her. So although they'd been in contact with Interpol, they tried detectives, they tried everything, they didn't get anything. Now they had the internet. So it seems that her husband put the names up in a search. And a week later, I got an email from her saying, Georgina, thanks to you, I found my family. Wow. I come from North Carolina. And she said, my sister and her husband are coming in to meet with me next week, and we want you to join us for lunch. Would you please do that? Well, I walked into the restaurant and I could have picked her out. They were like bookends. They looked exactly the same. It seems that she was one of a very large family of children that were put into foster care very early because their parents were addicts. And she went from foster care, was ill-treated, had a hysterectomy at age 12, and ended up being used and abused and just dumped, which is how she found herself on the park bench. But since then, her life has changed. She went to the American Embassy and got herself a passport. She managed to get all of her papers. And for a while there, every time she traveled, I'd get a card or an email saying, guess where I am? I'm in London. Guess where I am? And it was lovely. That's life-changing. That's the work.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. My guest is Georgina Cannon. Her new book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery, 20 Ways to Find the True You. Georgina, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Sure. All of my books are on Amazon or anywhere good books are sold in your local bookstore. You can certainly reach me through my website, which is www.georginacannon.com. And I answer all emails, always. I do have podcasts. I have a podcast channel under Georgina Cannon.
And we'll be back with more of Georgina after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Dad, I picked up your pills, made your lunch, and your laundry is done.
When you care for a loved one, you take care of everything. But are you taking care of yourself? Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Georgina Cannon. We're going to be talking about her new book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery, 20 Ways to Find the True You. Georgina, before we talk about the new book, let's talk about your previous books. How about Return Again?
Return Again is about past lives. And there's some chapters on the interlife as well. And it came about when the Canadian National Broadcasting Company asked me to do a series on past life regression for their Sunday news show. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not a circus. You don't put people into past lives for show. So the producer said, well, no, it's not a circus. We're very serious. We take our work seriously. I said, well, why don't you come to one of my workshops and see what it involves? So she came to the workshop was blown away and said, leave it with me. And she came back and said, I've got a budget for a 3-part series. So she said, but the only caveat is we find the people. We do the research to prove whether it's real or not. You cannot interfere in that. And we'll show what we find. So I said, terrific. I have one caveat, and that is you show that forgiveness and healing is important. She said, oh, we can do that. So they brought in 33 people, of which I facilitated past lives for, I think, 30 of them. 3 didn't go anywhere, of which 10 they could verify. They had researchers around the world. They verified. They chose 3 that made good TV, and they put them on TV, and one of whom spoke in a language in the show that she didn't speak in this current life, which blew everybody away. And that was the genesis of the book. So Return Again is a book about what past lives are, what they're not, what's the difference between heaven and hell, and how you create heaven and hell on this earth. There's also some case histories, which are fascinating, of course. And then there's some journeys into the interlife. In that book, though, called Return Again, there's also a journey that you can record for yourself to go and meet your soul group. So that is my gift to the reader. So that's Return Again.
And your next book is? Third Circle?
Thank you. My next book is The Third Circle Protocol, which is about relationships. So every time we have an interaction with anybody, Victor, you and I, or when I go to the supermarket myself with the cashier, or my sister, or any relationship, my boss, any relationship, was forming an unspoken contract. And that unspoken contract is the third circle. What is expected from you and what you can expect from me. And it all starts with the relationship with yourself. And the first couple of chapters are about the relationship with yourself and how it's based on your values and your priorities. What you absolutely need, bottom line, with every relationship, what you want and what you're prepared to give. And then it goes into different relationships, including relationships with your siblings, your parents, your boss, your employees, your dating, your ex, your teenager. And a lot of women's groups are using this book, by the way, for self-worth, self-esteem. So that's the other book. And then there's this book, my current one, which I'm so excited about because I had some brilliant minds work with me on it, Your Guide to Self-Discovery.
Please tell us what inspired this book.
Okay. I was talking to a friend one day, and we were discussing how we sometimes our own perception of ourselves is not how other people see us. And from that, I was thinking about that later. And from that, I realized that our perception of ourselves is not really our perception. It's what society has given us. It's what our parents have given us, and what our teachers, our job, our role in life has given us. But who are we really? So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to look at some of the older, ancient, esoteric protocols, plus some new ones, and make it sort of like a questionnaire that we go through. So I started researching some of the experts in various fields, including modern protocols like neurolinguistic programming, and some of the older ones like working with animal guides or working with your astrology signs. And I realized that I could get all these people together in one room, equal a book. Wouldn't that be fascinating? And so I started making the phone calls, and everyone was fascinated by the idea. They thought it was a good idea. And for the reader, of course, it's very rare you get all these experts in one place. So you have it. And at the end of each chapter, by the way, for instance, if you take your chapter on birth order by Donna Marks, at the end of the chapter, there's questions. Where are you in your birth order? How has that affected your life? So there's a small little questionnaire at the end of each chapter. And then right at the end of the book, there's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to yourself. Hello, my name is, my birth order is this, I'm a firstborn, which means that my number in numerology is 8, which means that so you're introducing yourself to your new self. You get a wide perspective, everything from your type of creativity, who your animal guide is, who your archetypes are, maybe even the name of your angels. Crystal Pomeroy had helped you with that one. And then you're working with more modern things like your SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and NLP, as I mentioned before. How to get into your Akashic records. What did they say about you? What did you learn from Marie Saint Germain about your Akashic records and your auras? Can you read your auras? If you couldn't before getting this book, you probably will be able to after you read that chapter and learn what it says about you. So you take all these pieces like a jigsaw and you make the new you. And this is really who you are. Oh, by the way, there's some beautiful drawings for hand reading, which I just love. And when I spoke to Lisa Greenfield about, she's in LA, by the way, she works a lot with stars and theater people. And I said, how do you do it over Zoom? Because, during COVID, she said, oh, I'll show you. Put your hand up against the screen. So I put my hand up against the screen. And she said, oh my, you're resilient. Oh. And I was taken back because I never thought of myself as resilient. But of course, that's who I am. I am resilient. And she saw that in my hand. So she has given us some fabulous diagrams in the book.
And among the offerings from gifted authors and practitioners, several of which have been guests on my past shows.
Yes.
And one of my favorites is Kelly Sullivan Walden, who is known as Dr. Dream. Tell us a little of what she shares about recurring dreams and how they open us to self-discovery.
The thing that Kelly does is face, which a lot of dream readers don't do, face bad dreams. So she talks about what happens if you have a bad dream and how to turn it around. And I think that is so important because our dreams are the part of us that the conscious mind doesn't want to acknowledge at this time. But the subconscious mind is sort of like knocking at the door saying, pay attention here, pay attention here. So they tell you a lot about what's going on inside you, inside your mind, inside your being that needs attention. So her chapter is full of information, very helpful and calming if you have bad dreams. And I've already heard from people who say, oh, thank goodness, I'm so grateful for this particular chapter because I've always dreamt that there was, this happening in my life and that happening, and it was always negative. And now Kelly has shown me how to turn it around.
And Judy Wilkins Smith offers a piece on family constellations and self-discovery. What are family constellations? How do they shape our lives?
I have no idea. I read her chapter with awe, and I think, how does she know that? And like all experts, it's deep, it's wide, but it's readable. Family constellations are basically what you inherit and the push and pull of the different roles people play in your family and extended family. But beyond that, I can't tell you. To have to read her chapter.
Read her chapter.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I had the blessing of an Akashic record reading, which proved to be both affirming and life-enhancing for me. And in your guide to self-discovery, you offer a piece by Maureen Saint Germain. What are the Akashic records?
They are everything that your soul has experienced and may experience. And I say may, not everybody agrees with me there, but I say may because I believe we have free choice, may experience in depth in your many lifetimes and iterations, because we've had many iterations apart from lifetimes, but also it tells you the wisdom and shows you the wisdom that comes from these lifetimes. it's an opportunity to get a huge aha that it maybe never occurred to you before. Is that what you got out of it?
And yes, and from listeners who are familiar with Edgar Cayce, he was a reader of the Akashic Records also. Absolutely.
A master.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
You also offer a piece by Richard Webster about the aura and what the various colors mean.
Yes.
Give us a couple of examples. Tease us a little.
Yeah, he is an interesting person. He is someone who sees auras and takes it for granted. And I used to be like that until I switched it off because it gets in the way. We can all see auras, but it's only energy, after all, that manifests in a color. And Richard shows you how to see your aura and then what to do with what you find. And if you find that you are carrying a lot of deep anger that's getting in the way of your life, you cover it over, you pretend it's not there, it shows up in your aura. And then you can, we can't change anything until we recognize that it's there. So this is beautiful too. But it also shows if you're a natural healer. It allows you to embark on different paths, or not necessarily different, but an also path in your life when you find another different facet of yourself. Oh, I didn't know I had the healer in me. Well, you do now after reading and Richard's chapter and finding your aura.
And the delightful Dr. Paulette Sherman writes about our archetypes and what we may learn from them. What are some of the archetypes?
Oh, I love that. I use archetypes a lot in my coaching and counseling. Archetypes were created by Carl Jung originally. They're the sections, if you like, or the breakdowns of the different parts of our personality. So it ranges from hero to warrior to victim to mother to child to seeker, adventurer. It runs the gamut. And I ask the client, and she asks you to find out which are the top 5 or 6 archetypes that you are and how you can use them. Because until you know what you are, how can you use it? So what I do with my clients, and this is a good thing to do, once you've read the book and you find out your archetypes, imagine these archetypes are sitting around a boardroom table. Give them some sort of costume or other, and ask them a question that you're stuck with. Should I stay in my job? Should I leave this place and move to another city? And ask each one of them. Ask the child, ask the creator, ask the warrior, ask each one, and you'll get a different answer from each one of them. I call them your shadow cabinet. Archetypes, knowing your archetypes are very important in how you make your choices in life because they're your strengths. And again, you'll recognize the ones that are not so strong and you can do something about it.
And Jung also coined the word synchronicity, meaning meaningful coincidences without causal connection. I've experienced those throughout my life, especially recognized since my late 30s when my spiritual path reopened. What about synchronicity?
Well, synchronicity is there all the time because partly we see what we look for. If you're thinking about buying a new car, suddenly you notice cars. If you're thinking about, should I get a red car or a white car? I mean, that's the way my mind works. Suddenly you see red and white cars. Or I'm thinking, winter's coming. I really do need to get some boots. And suddenly you see people wearing boots, or you see ads for boots. We see what we look for. So that's part of synchronicity. It's the same with numbers. People who are believe, I was going to say fixated, and that's not fair. People who believe in numbers that show up like 222 or 1111, and they mean something to them. If that's what they believe, then they will see numbers everywhere. If you don't believe in that, you don't even notice numbers. That, for me, is what synchronicity is. We see what we look for. When we're out looking for someone who's kind, that's what we see.
I've had the experience of synchronicity on a different level.
Oh, yes, yes.
Where opportunities in my life, the old
Mhm.
expression, when one door closes, another opens.
Yes.
I've had them happen dramatically time after time.
Well, I, from what I know of you, I doubt very much that you were not open to opportunity.
The timing is the the amazing part about it for me. It just so without literally without hesitation. My guest is Georgina Cannon. Her book is entitled Your Guide to Self-Discovery: 20 Ways to Find the True You. We'll be back with more after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Georgina Cannon. Her book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery: 20 Ways to Find the True You. Of course, Your Guide to Self-Discovery includes several chapters with your experience and wisdom of past life regression and other topics. How may discovering what we have brought from our past lives enhance and heal our current life?
Well, people call it our karma, right? So what we bring from past lives, to start with, we live in patterns. How we walk, how we talk, how we use our hands when we're talking, how we hold our coffee cup. These patterns are exacerbated by how we've lived in other lifetimes. So if we've lived in other lifetimes as a victim, and we're born into a family where we're victimized in this time, unless we do something about it, unless we recognize it as such, and we change it, then we're doomed, if you like, to be reborn into another lifetime as a victim, because we have to take charge and move from victim to hero. We can't keep blaming karma. You know, you can blame your mother, you blame the government, you blame the weather, blame karma, but karma is in your hands. You can do something about it. Even the people in dire circumstances, in refugee camps, in poverty, in illness, terminal illness, there are always some people that rise to the top. And when I say rise to the top, I don't mean become the boss. I mean operate from a platform of kindness towards others, find the best in life, change their view of where they are in their lifetime, and bring in some beauty and some joy into it. So I work a lot with clients on changing karmas because, people come in and they say things like, how do I always choose losers? How do I always, why am I always stuck? Every time I start something, I shoot myself in the foot. And after we've looked at, is it a current life issue? Then we go into a past life and see if it's pattern that they brought in with them. So the pattern that you bring in from past lives is your karma. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. If it's not so good, then you can do something about it. Does that answer the question?
That's an important point. A lot of people think that karma is punishment. It's not punishment, is it?
No, it's not punishment. It's not punishment. It's just that you've chosen to be who and how you are because it's easier. It's following the pattern. I was in my previous, as an example, this is not me, but I'm just using it as an example. If you were in a previous lifetime as somebody who was a slave and beaten and treated really badly and had no identity, and then in this life, in the same session, you went through another lifetime where maybe you were an 18th century wealthy woman who was stuck in the house because society wouldn't let you go out and do what you wanted to do, which was to teach and to travel. So you had no identity. And if you come into this lifetime of a brutalized family where you're not allowed to speak your truth or even speak, sometimes just told you're stupid, that is the karma you brought in with you. So unless you realize that pattern and say, no, not anymore, I'm going to break that chain. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to lift myself up out of it. Recognize it, work with a professional to help you get there, whoever that professional is, and make the changes and start a new life, start a new pattern, because really that's what karma is, I believe.
An opportunity to change.
Opportunity to change, to grow, to flourish.
And to recognize what works, what doesn't work, and to move forward.
Right, move forward.
Einstein's old expression about the definition of insanity, and I'm paraphrasing, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome.
Yeah.
You also offer a chapter on relationships and what they may teach us. What are some of the clues we may learn from our relationships?
Well, again, it's patterning. If we always choose people who are charming, I was discussing this with someone yesterday. It's a difference between being nice and being kind. If you always choose relationships, both friendships and lovers, that are nice, or, I don't know, they're handsome, charming, but underneath, they're like steel, and you go from one to another, and it lasts for 2 years, 3 years, and then you move on, nothing clicks. That's where the mismatch is. You haven't really looked at what you absolutely need and want in every relationship. First for yourself, and then with the others. What's your bottom line deal breaker? For me, it's being heard, respect, kindness, time. Okay, you've got to know these things. And if you have friends that can't give you that, at least 3 of them, then you're not going to form a close and loving and permanent relationship. So it's important to know what you need in your relationship and what you're prepared to give. And just because someone makes you laugh, it's great. Humor is a great lovely thing to share between people. But if it's alone and that person belittles you in the laughter, no, I don't think so. So be very clear about what your boundaries are, what your requirements are, and what you're looking for in your relationships.
And what about in our business and work relationships?
Same thing. If you work for a company that doesn't have your same values, when I was in the corporate world, they used to say this a lot. Our most valuable asset goes down in the elevator every night at 5:00. And we'd laugh because we weren't treated like valuable assets. So you have to know what the values are of the company you're working for. And if you have a boss or someone who rules your time and how you use your time, who doesn't treat you with respect, no, I'm not asking them to be your parent. I'm asking them to be your coach, your guide, your boss, but they have to treat you with respect what you know, what you want to learn, what you want to grow into. Then you don't belong there. And know that. Don't suffer. Know that it's time to move on. Own yourself. You are the CEO of your life. Own yourself.
And what about soulmates? Are soulmates real?
Soulmates are real, but I don't think they're what some people think they are. My belief system, and it's only my belief system, is that soulmates are here to teach us. So it could be someone who drives you crazy at work, and you've learned to have patience with that person who natters on and natters on and natters on. So they've taught you patience. Or it could be an ex who taught you how to have boundaries. Soulmates are not necessarily your love, your soul love for life. They're there to teach you. Now, that doesn't mean that your soulmate can't be a person who you fall in love with and they fall in love with you and you teach each other to be whole and blessed and kind and loved. It doesn't mean that, but everybody in one way or another, particularly if they're difficult to get along with, I believe is a soulmate. And I remember a long time ago, one of my therapists said to me, one day you will thank your mother. And I said, you've got to be kidding. She said, I promise you, one day you will. And eventually I got it. Because without her, I wouldn't be doing what I am today, and I wouldn't be the person I am today. She was my teacher. Uncomfortable, unkind, brutal. But look, I learned big lessons from her.
And the lessons that we learn in those situations are how to open our hearts to others and become compassionate and loving people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What would you like readers to take away from your guide to self-discovery, 20 ways to find the true you?
Oh, I'd like them to take away that you are so much more than you think you are. It's my job to help you find your magnificence. And through this book, you'll be on your way. It is an exciting, fun, easy to read, engaging way of discovering your true self, who you truly are. And that's fun.
Absolutely. I had the blessing of, in my late 30s, attending a series of what they used to refer to as spiritual gatherings or Friday evening gatherings here in New York. And this wonderful woman who was well into her 80s at the time was sponsoring these. And one evening there was a presentation, the speaker had come, And I was not comfortable with the teachings that he was sharing. And this woman immediately recognized that I was uncomfortable with this. I never said anything, but just she could read my face and my expressions.
And your body language.
And my body language. And at the end of the evening, while people were leaving, she said, would you mind staying around for a few minutes? I'd like to speak with you. I said, oh, of course. And she looked me in the eyes like a loving mother and said, Victor, I want to share something with you. She said, God does not require us to be holy, but God would love for us to be whole. And that statement changed my life.
Yes.
Embrace that which we resonate with. Let go of that which we do not. And in the process, find our wholeness.
Yes. That's lovely. Yes.
My guest, Georgina Cannon, her book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery, 20 Ways to Find the True You. Georgina, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Thank you. Yes, you can get my books on Amazon, of course, and all good bookstores. And, attend your local bookstore. They deserve your presence there. So go to your local bookstore as well as online at Amazon. And my website is www.georginacannon.com.
Georgina, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this wonderful work and wisdom.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been such a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.